I've created a book. It's done. Uh, I'm going to break it to you gently. Actually, I'm not going to break it to you gently at all. It's not done at all. It's like you've literally walked up like part of Mount Fuji here behind me. There's quite a long way to go. So there are 4 other steps. You notice everything here is in 5s, right? So 5 principles in the creation, and then there are 5 steps. The first step is creation. The next step is publishing. And
Alexander, would you do me a favor and just repeat,
yeah.
because I forgot to start the recording. So can you just repeat the 5 stages that we mentioned for the creation?
Yeah, time, purpose, evolution, structure, mindset.
Yeah.
Okay, those are the 5 principles behind the creation step.
Yeah. So now we come to the state where we've actually written the book, and then
yep.
comes the real serious process that we're dealing with now.
which is for us writers, like who get into flow, who create things, who maybe like we may have spring energy or summer energy, actually going into the structure of this and the logistics of this and bringing it to life. This is often what stops us from actually creating the book. So the second step in the process is publishing. Now, you may think publishing happens right at the end. I would encourage you to think about publishing before you start. Now, in your case, Susanne, you self-published, right? You are now a publisher.
Yeah, I actually signed myself. I already have a company. So for me, it's not that difficult because I have a company and a legal structure. So I just decided to make a public house with the same kind of legal structure. And it came because I didn't think about it in a way, because I already knew who was going to edit my book. And this is the Alison, who is here at the call, and I also was very clear who I wanted to do the graphic design. So those were clear for me. I saw the book for me. I knew how it was going to look. So I realized too late that that's actually a part of the publishing house to be in that whole process. So yeah. It felt kind of like natural that I had to get on with doing the self-publishing. But there's different, maybe you just get us into the different structures.
So there are 3 different ways you can publish a book. You can go to a publishing house, you can self-publish as Susanne did, or you can go with a hybrid version. Publishing house, there are thousands of publishing houses. Some of them are niche, some of them are broader, some of them are famous, some of them are not famous. Publishing is going through massive challenges at the moment. Why? Because it's created in a previous paradigm. Right? So all of us who have done some level of work, otherwise you wouldn't be in Peter's Congress, you wouldn't have met Susanne. It's just impossible. Like if you're on this call, you've done work. So if that's true, then you might find the publishing house process is a little bit restrictive for you because it was created in a different paradigm. Now, I'm not saying don't go down that route. I'm just saying if you do go down that route, bear in mind that it's relatively rare for a first-time author that a publishing house is going to pick you up and pay for everything. So what happens with most publishing houses is they say, well, as part of the deal, you need to buy 5,000 copies. I don't know, 5,000 people to send the book to. 5,000 copies is a lot. And then the second thing they'll do is, yes, they'll say that they're going to edit it for you and they're going to promote it for you. And I just had a conversation like in the last few weeks with a guy who leads the World Economic Forum Foundation, and he's about to publish a book with a relatively well-known publisher. And he came to me for advice on how to market the book. Okay, you would think the publishing house would be doing that. And the publishing house is like, well, maybe you could do some of it. It's like, well, I don't know how to do this. So just bear in mind that they may put a series of offers on the table and they may not be able to deliver on those promises. And at totally the opposite end of the spectrum is what Susanne's talking about. Now, this book here, a masterpiece, which I talked about earlier, does actually have words inside it. You see that? So this book I self-published. My company, The Artist Inside, is now a publisher. My first book I self-published, but I self-published it by default because I didn't really think it through. This book, which I co-authored, Legacy, this was actually published by Dean Publishing in Australia. And Dean Publishing is probably more of a hybrid model. So what happens with a hybrid model is you pay a publisher who may have a slightly higher level of consciousness for the components that you want. So what are the components? You may want editing support. You may want to
Are we here? Am I the only
We've
one?
lost you.
He frozen.
We lost him, but I'm still here, so I will take over. So I kind of decided to do the self-publishing. I'm in the middle of it, which is there's a whole lot of practical details around it that I hope Alexander will help us with when he gets back. But it's the first thing is this thing about that you actually have to register yourself as a publishing house to be able to self-publish, and you need to get what is called an ISBN number to get for your book, and I think that's an international standard. Now we admit Alexander again, yeah, and in Denmark, that's quite easy. I don't know how it works in other countries, but I guess probably have easy systems for that also. So it was easier than I thought to do that. It took me an hour, and then I had a publishing house and an ESPN. But Alexander, are you back? Do you want to come in again?
He's back, Mary. He's not really with us.
He's still not with us, so I'll just talk on here. So that was the first chance to. I can also say something about editing before we go to that. Alison, I made an agreement with Alison to help me edit the book, and she quickly came back and said, "I'm not going to do a big change in your language because it's quite unique, your own style of language." So she more helped me with, yeah, maybe you can say something a little bit, Alison, about editing a book and being the editor of this book also, while we're waiting for Alexander to get back.
Yeah, sure. So it was, yeah, I had the privilege of helping Susanne with the book. And like she said earlier, she takes you on a tour of her life. So she takes you from when she was 10 years old, and we actually experience her as a 10-year-old, and we experience her as she grows up into this wonderful, amazing adult that she is today. And because she mentioned earlier as well, she's Danish. She's got there was a very strong, that came across very strong with the writing as well, but it is also part of who she is. So, with editing, we can either do an entire rewrite of things to make it fit something. But for me, I just felt I needed to keep her tone, and I needed to keep the writing true to who she is and what she's trying to say. So it was really just more about looking for the obvious mistakes or the punctuation, the grammar, and all of that sort of thing. So it was just, for me, even though it was an edit, it was assisting her with an edit and trying to keep her voice authentic and true to who she is. And like she said earlier as well, it's just funny. She said to me at some stage, I think maybe we should stop because we're going to drive the designer insane. So I can't do any more proofreading or edits or anything big. But it's also just being on the journey with her and just trying to channel Susanne as I was editing and helping with the editing. So yeah, that's my bit about that. Just being true to her voice and trying to keep it true to the English language as well.
And for me, it meant it was quite essential that I knew I had Alison on my side, and that I very early on I asked Alison whether she would be helping me to edit, because first of all, English is not my native language, so I needed to have somebody who had English as their mother tongue to do the editing, and second, so this there was a really trust in myself because I could write in whatever language I had, because I knew I had Alison to kind of correct. I thought it was such a luxury to have an editor, actually, to be honest. I'm used to correcting everybody else's text, but to actually have somebody, it gave me such a feeling of security that there was somebody I could talk to about the text, and there was also somebody that I felt close to, that I could discuss the different elements of the text. So that's just a recommendation to really have somebody that can help you. even though you will later take it to a publisher and have a formal editor from a publishing house, I think it's really great to have somebody to work with you on the text who can give you feedback along the way.
I would definitely agree with that. Sorry,
Do you want to come in again, Alexander?
I am here. Yeah, can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yeah, we don't hear you so well.
Oh, really?
Now we hear you.
Okay, good. So I would totally agree with that. By the way, my computer just shut down, literally just shut down. I didn't do anything and it just closed. What did I say? Anyway, put that to one side. So the role of an editor, the editor is holding the container for you. And that enables you just to create. It's the masculine component which is holding the creation. The creation is more feminine, Mother Earth, right? Mother Nature, Mother Earth. That's creating. If that's in flow, it will create in flow. The role of an editor, one person can play both roles, but you're switching energies in order to do that. And yes, you will edit your own text to some extent, but having another editor is really, really useful. And I've done it with all of my books. And Alison's fantastic. I've worked with a couple of really, really good editors. So yes, editing is part of the process. So first step is creation. I actually would include editing within that step. You might separate it, but I would say creation includes editing. Then publishing, I just talked about those three different types of publishing. Hybrid publishing is where you would take different modules, right? So you would say, well, I want editing, I want design, I want marketing, and that will cost you, the investment there would cost you anywhere from $4,000 to $10,000, right, with a good hybrid publisher, right? So that's the second.
But that meaning that you still have all the income from the book then?
Correct.
The self-publishing, of course, the advantage is that you get all the income from any sales of the book.
Yeah.
You will make the investments, but you also get the income.
Yeah.
And here you make
house, they get the majority, and I'm not entirely sure what they do for it. Unless you're like a really, really known author, my suggestion is not to go down the publishing house route.
No, you only get 10% or something like from the income when the cost have been taken out. It's not that much.
And that comes back to that purpose question. Why are you writing it? If you're writing it to make money, I would suggest that, well, I'm going to break it to you not very gently, you won't. Sorry, there's not money in publishing a book these days. Unless you've really made your name, that's not where you're going to make the money. So what is it? I mean, mine was effectively a business card. I can hand this to somebody and say, come and join me on a program. It can be part of a communications process to another program, yes. So some people will buy the book. Some people will come into the program. As I say, my motivation was best-selling book. The third thing to talk about is the design side of things. And Susanne, you've touched on this quite a bit. Design is interesting. It's not just the cover design. So what does the cover look like? In this case, it is white, but actually imprinted in here, engraved in here is the word masterpiece. This is obviously a totally different cover design. Susanne, you've been through the cover design. Now this book, you can see it's quite a big book actually. Like this is a paperback book, and this book is actually a smaller book, even though it's a hardback book. And if I open this book, it's a lot smaller inside. So the design is not just cover, which is what we'd think about. It's also what size and what format are you going with. Susanne, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that's interesting, because when I started talking to Alison, she asked me what size are you want, and I had this size on my table, and I said, well, I was aiming for quite big size. But then when I started talking to the designer the other day or last week, I realized that I actually would like to go for, and I also thought it was going to be in a hardcover version of the book. But then we ended up instead making a smaller size book. So it's only a 12 centimeters time 20 centimeters book, which, because my designer said, oh, the book that you're writing is kind of like a book you want to take along with you. That kind of felt close to me. It's something that you can actually more or less put in your pocket. But then, of course, it became a thick book. It became a lot more pages so now I think it's up around 280 pages. I thought it was only going to be around 140 pages. So it makes a lot of change depending on what the size you go into of the book. And then for me, I knew from the beginning that I wanted it to be, because I'm working in performing arts and I'm working with aesthetic people, I knew also that the designer I've worked with for 20 years, she did the logo for my business design stuff. And I knew I wanted to have it some kind of resonate with that. So I took actually the color from my business card from my coaching business, and one of the colors from Birka, it's a pink and a green color. I just knew I had to have those colors in part of the book. So I knew I wanted the book to be full four color print. So it's 4-color print all the way. And I also had this idea that the main text is on the one side of the book, and then on the left side of the book, I have poems that I wrote as a young girl, quotations from people, poems from other people, and also I added photos that I took of nature around my residency place. So for me, it's just an important element that the main text that I wrote, it's just another way of expressing aesthetics, and it's about having this vibrancy from the nature being a part of the book also. So I knew I had to make a 4-color print and make it in a way that and use the money. Of course, it's more expensive to get a book designed like this, but I was just like, if this is the one book I'm going to write, I want it to be a nice looking book.
Beautiful.
But that's, of course, you don't need to use so much money on it. You can do it a lot easier.
Absolutely. And what you're touching on now is actually getting into the different formats that you will publish it in. So there are 3 formats for a book. The first one is what you're talking about, which is a print book. And that happens to be a paperback book. Your book is going to be a paperback. Second is a print publication, which is a hardback book. Right, so this is actually a kind of moleskin style book. And the third option is a Kindle style online book. And again, which format you go with comes back to what is the purpose of writing the book. So why are you writing the book? What is the underlying driver for writing the book? So for instance, you may say, well, I'm writing the book because I want to become a bestseller. You may say I'm writing the book to hand it out to friends. That's what I did with my first book. I literally printed 250 copies and I handed it to change makers who are making a difference in the world. And I said, I want to give you a copy of this book. And there were only 250 copies. You can't buy the book anywhere. It's in, like, I have 15 copies left. That's it. So I've handed 235 books out to people. You may say that's my strategy. I just want to do that. Now, the format then links in to the platforms and the communications. So what we're going to talk about now in the last 15, 20 minutes is a little bit about the platforms and the communications. But are there any questions on what we've talked about there in terms of publishing option and format options? Okay. All right, now I'm going to talk about 2 options in terms of publishing. And this, Susanne, is really where your original question came from and where this conversation came from, right?
I was lost, to be honest. I thought, well, I got it done by writing the book, but then I was just like, oh my God, how am I going to do this? So that's why I asked Alexander on this call to kind of help me to move on to the next couple of stages here. So I'm all ears now.
Okay, so there are 2 options now when it comes to publishing, really 2 options, right? If you're self-publishing, there are 2 platforms through which I would encourage you to consider publishing. Now, again, it comes back to your purpose. The first one is Kindle Direct Publishing. in other words, Amazon. And the second one is Ingram Sparks. And I'm just going to talk you through the difference of these two before I show them to you. So Kindle Direct Publishing, it enables you to publish as a Kindle book, in other words, an ebook, which you can read on any e-reader or on your phone. And it also enables you to publish a paperback book, print on demand. Second option, Ingram Sparks, enables you to do the same thing. And I publish Masterpiece on both of these. Why? Because some people don't like Amazon. And I have a lot of sympathy with that. Right? Having just, for those of you who are in the Congress, just embodied Elon Musk. I have a view on Jeff. It's not the most complimentary view. I still use Amazon. I've still published my book there, and I'll explain why I published it. Some people don't want to go to Amazon. They want to go to an independent bookseller. Now, what Ingram Spark enables you to do is to get to 40,000 independent booksellers, to Barnes & Noble, and to other places. So publishing on both of these platforms is really, really helpful. And it's really easy to publish, right? So what I did, just share my screen. Can you see my screen? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we're there.
So this is KDP, Kindle Direct Publishing. If I just sign in, okay, so I signed in earlier, so Elaine will be back in. This is my book, Masterpiece, What You Would Do with All the Time and Money in the World. You'll see that a Kindle version is live, and you'll see that a paperback version is live. You'll see the prices here, and you'll also see the markets that it's in. So US, UK, Germany, France, blah, 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 etc., etc. And the same thing for the paperback version. So literally uploading your book is really simple. Like if you want to create a new title, you've got the option to create a Kindle book. I'm just going to sign back in again.
But Alexander, there's something about you have to ask your graphic designer to do it in an EPUB format, right?
Correct. So now we're into the book, right? So you get to choose the language, the title, the subtitle, series, you can skip that, the edition, unless you're writing multiple versions, you can skip that as well. Obviously the author, contributors. Now this description, right, this appears on Amazon. So where does this appear? Let me show you for my book. This is my book on Amazon.com. This is the description, right? And you can, I can't remember how many characters. It's quite long there, you can see.
Well, it's at 4,000.
4,000, okay. There you go, 4,000 characters. It's relatively long. Then about the copyright, if you've written the book, you own the copyright. Keywords. Keywords is, I can't remember how I did it for myself, but the keywords are the key things that people might search by. Now, this is really important, the categories. Now, this again comes back to your purpose. So if your purpose is just to be a published author, choose the categories that are most linked to your book. If your purpose is to become a bestseller, choose categories that are loosely related to your book, that are not popular. Let me unbundle that for you. What do I mean by categories that are loosely related to your book, and why would you do that? Well, if you see here, these are all the product details of the book. This is my book. It's 234 in Business of Art. It's 747 in Business of Art reference, and it's 1007 in Museum Studies and Museology. When I launched the book, and I'll talk about launching it, it got to number 2 in Business of Art and number 2 in Business of Art reference in the US, which is not bad going because the US is the hardest market to crack. It got to number 1 in the UK. It got to number 1 in Business of Art. It got to number 1 in all 3 in France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Japan, and Mexico. So why? So and that ranks it as a bestseller. So if it gets to number 1 in any of these categories, it's ranked as a bestseller. Now, if you go back to my original purpose, my purpose was to be able to say I'm a best-selling author. I was already a best-selling co-author with this book, but my intention was to become a best-selling author. Now, you may say, well, I have a totally different strategy. My strategy was entirely focused around that. So my editor, Natalie, helped me to find categories, because she's looked at the categories and the algorithms within Amazon for the last 5 years, and she helped me to find categories that were loosely related to my book, which were not popular. Why is that important? Well, it's only important if you want your book to become a best-selling book. If you don't, then put it in the ones which are most tightly related to your book. So again, it comes back to your purpose. If you're going for a New York Times best-selling author, you'll need to sell a few thousand books in a limited period of time, like a 48-hour period of time. You also need to have political influence. Right? So there's a political element, we believe, to the algorithm in the New York Times, which is very difficult to quantify. The Amazon algorithm is simpler, but the Amazon algorithm also, in the US, it appears to take into account comments. Right? So you saw on mine, there were 15 reviews of the book, and you can purchase comments. And so I know that the person who was ahead of me in the US was buying the comments because I read the comments. They didn't add up, right? And they're all kind of 5-star comments. So the US algorithm for Amazon works very slightly differently than the rest of the world works. The rest of the world works on the basis of how many books have you sold. Now, if you're choosing a category that is not that popular, and you sell a few hundred books, you will become a bestseller in a specific period of time.
Okay.
Right?
From a legal point of view, you can call yourself a bestseller. That's it. Okay, yeah.
And so like, you have to play the game if you want to become a New York Times bestseller. You have to play the game if you want to become an Amazon bestseller. Which game do you want to play? And if you don't want to play the game because that's not of interest to you, then don't play the game, right? So it's genuinely a choice, right, of what you want to do. Francis, I would also argue that using a book for credibility or as a visiting card can also be tricky. Books tend to hang around for a while. It's true, they do. Like, once a book's published, it's there. So I mean, this book, I you know, Masterpiece is basically 46 years in the making. It took me 46 years to be ready to write that book. Exactly the point that Susanne is making. At 59, you're ready to write a book. It will be there for. It's not just like I mean, I stand by every word in this book. Every single word I would stand behind. So that's how KDP works, and then. Ingram Spark works in a very similar way. So this is Ingram Spark. You log in, and this is Ingram Spark. Again, you just upload your title, and you have an option to upload.
I guess, Alexander, that depends a little bit about where in the world you are and what market you have locally also, right?
Sure, absolutely.
Of course, I have a different market locally in Denmark, doesn't be there at all.
Yep.
So just look into the local markets you have yourself individually and what is working in Switzerland or Sweden or Denmark, and how is that working. And while I'm at that, also at what I found really interesting when I started to research into this was to find there was a new pub network here in Denmark with 3,000 people actively supporting each other on how to publish themselves. So there might be in any country. If it's in Denmark, it's probably also in other countries. You know, this where you can exchange on how to do it in your own local circumstances also. Yeah.
So so those are the kind of two main platforms. And you're right, Susanne. It has to be linked to country you're doing it in. It has to be linked to, again, back to your objectives. What are you trying to do? I mean, in Switzerland, there's no Amazon. So you have to go to Germany, France, Italy. It doesn't exist here. And then I went to the US and I went to the UK because I'm British and I have many of my community are in the US as well. So that's why I went to those markets. And my editor was an Australian. She promoted it in Australia, which is why it became a bestseller there. And in Japan, because I have a partner there. So that's a little bit about the platforms and the formats that you'll need it in, as Susanne just said. You'll need it in an EPUB if you're printing a Kindle. You'll need it in a PDF if you're printing a paperback. And Ingram Sparks and Amazon will both do print and demand. So you don't have to print 5,000 books. You just literally print the ones you want to print. And then you'll need the cover design in a JPEG or a PDF format. And they have all the guidelines on there. So don't get involved in that. If you have a designer, then get the designer to extend the guidelines to the designer. Mm-hmm. Now, the final part and the most important part is, perhaps the most important part, is the communications. Mm-hmm. And the communications, again, comes back to what your objective is. If you're writing this for yourself, then you may just decide to print a few and hand them out. If you're writing it for to become a bestseller, then you'll have to compress the sales into a certain period of time. Mm. With Amazon, it's 48 hours. So you're compressing it into a certain period of time in order for those sales to happen. So what you're doing then, and what I've recommended for Susanne to do, is to take a book, publish it on Kindle first. This is the advice my editor gave me. Publish it on Kindle first, wait 2 weeks, and then publish it as a paperback. So literally just the ebook first. The reason you publish an ebook first is because you can reduce the price in the US to $1.99 and in Europe to €2.49. That's the lowest you can get. And you can basically send then an email to your community and say, buy my book. I've reduced the price for a week, compressed it into this period of time, and it will be available for this period of time at this price.
And this is actually, Alexander told me this morning when we were preparing for this meeting. So just to say, at least the ones who are in my email list, you will get an invite for a pre-launch party next Friday. And then the book will be launched on Saturday. And then I'm going to ask everybody to get the book for $2 or whatever in the next couple of days. And then instead of, I was actually going to give the book out for free to my community, but then he suggested if you do that, you might be able to make them buy that book on Kindle or on Amazon, so you can actually get up the ratings.
And then what you can do, the reason for delaying the printing of it, now you've obviously printed 200 copies, is then what you can do is you can put a little flash on the book which says it's a bestseller. So that's exactly what I've done. I'm not sure whether it's on this version here that the latest one I uploaded. No, it's not. But there is a version I have where there's a little flash on the front, and on the paperback it says it's a best-selling book.
I kind of like that my clear aesthetic book doesn't have that for the first edition.
It's fine.
But I can always brag about it somewhere else.
In terms of communications, this conversation right now that we're having is actually, if you deconstruct it, is part of Susanne's book launch.
Really? Of course.
So what we're doing here is we now have a video here, and we've just talked you through the process of how you launch a book. And Susanne has been able to talk a little bit about her book. And some of you are like, oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. And then the next step is actually launching it. We're going to do a launch party next Friday, which you're all welcome to join. I'll send out the invite for that. You're welcome to join that launch party, see how the launch party goes. And of course, then you're welcome to buy the book. And the book will launch next Saturday, right on your birthday.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I wasn't really thinking about, I just needed to have some technical advice on how to do all of this. So I asked Alexander if he could help me, and he said, yeah, I would be happy to, but we can just make it a more open event. And I said, okay, yeah, let's do that. And then I suddenly realized when I was sending out the invitation, this is actually quite smart, because this is the way I can start to talk about the book. So yeah. So that's fine.
And all of you will find your own way.
Yeah. And can I just say something about that also, because I also realized that it's a difficult. I have been advising artists for 30 years, and I've been doing communication for artists, and I've always noticed this thing about artists don't want to talk about their work, and I've always been a little bit, oh come on, you have to talk about your work. And now I realize why they don't want to talk about the work, because it's so intimate to start talking about this book. I'm just like, I can really feel the nervousness about it, because it's my inner child. I'm really giving everything away in that book in a way. So, no, not everything. Alison kept saying, oh, you're holding something back. Yes, I am, of course, but I am going deep in the book. So I'm also really nervous about how people are going to take the book. And Peter, my mother, that was the biggest obstacles for me. I almost did not launch this book because of her. It was like, and I had to go and sit down and have a coffee with her. And my husband was laughing at me because I was all shaky talking to my mother and telling her that I was doing this book. Because that is, you know, the persons who are more private to you, that's the obstacle for you. You know, what are they going to say if I write a book? That was mine also. And I'm still scared to hell what she's going to say. Some part of me hope that she's never going to read it. No.
Excellent.
I need to leave, unfortunately, because I have a call in 1 minute, and I'm aware that we haven't kind of opened it up for questions, and I'm sure there are questions.
Yes, I have one.
So I'm going to leave. Yeah, just a second, Rob, because I genuinely have to jump. I'm going to leave this conversation, and what I'm going to suggest we do, Susanne, because also one of the things which emerged, like, and I'll just put this out here as an idea. One of the things which emerged is maybe there's interest in us, like, guiding you through that process. So we've talked you through it in an hour and a half, but maybe there's interest in actually guiding you through that process. So one of the things we've thought about is running a masterpiece program just for authors, actually just for and we're obviously bringing all the right people in order to do that. So I put that out there as a thought, and if it resonates, then what I think we'll do, Susanne, is we'll probably set up another conversation, a 30-minute conversation, which is kind of Q&A conversation. And you're welcome to stay behind after this conversation as well, because it's on Susanne's link, and ask your questions.
I will stay around for a couple of minutes for questions for all of you, and I think it's I think in a way you got your answer, but the interest also in this, is there's a book waiting inside of you? You know, that's the question to ask. I would have loved to have all of the masterpiece be about writing a book, but I know I never was able to write this book if it was not for Alexander. Well, I was going to thank him, but yeah, you're still here. If you had not been inviting me into this masterpiece, I would never have written this book. So that's clear to me. So it's getting the right help. You know, you're not supposed to sit around for yourself in your own little cave and do the work. It's about connecting to other people and understanding that that's how we fuel as human beings. So thank you very much, Alexander, for doing this together with me, and have fun. Go ahead for your other jump, and I'll stay around if any of you have questions. Yeah. What, Ralph, you said you had
Yes, I had a question. Actually, I had exactly the story that you told. I had a publisher, and then I got a 4 pages long contract in which the most of the things were what my duties are, but it was not written what they will do. And it was, I felt, no, that's not right. And then I went for self-publishing, and I landed in BOD, Book on Demand.
Yeah.
And there I realized they cannot publish the book or bring the book in the bookstores of Switzerland. They can do everything with Amazon and Kindle and electronic books and physical books, but they don't bring. And this is now my question: how can I make print on demand, self-publishing, and bring my book into the bookstores in Switzerland?
Yeah, that's, and this is why I was pointing to it too. Well, you know, some these English speaking people are always so easy, you know, they think it's so easy. It's always more difficult when you have a different language and you have to do it in your own. I realized that I have to do it twice. I also have to do all my newsletters both in Danish and English. You know, it's like it's a little bit more complicated for us not English speakers. So I had to do something about the Danish market also, which is a separate story. And it will probably be a separate story. But Ralph, what I will suggest is that you try to search for, this is why I mentioned this new publish network that we have in Denmark, because there might be something similar in Switzerland. So you can look into what are the networks that you have locally that can actually maybe help you into what you're doing. In Denmark, there's quite a systematic approach that there's a library online book service station, and you send out when you publish. This is also why I print, actually. I print 200 copies before, you know, from the beginning, because then I have books to actually send to these publishing centrals, and they will do a kind of comment on the book and send out to all the bookstores here in Denmark. So there is a system for that here in Denmark, but I actually need to send 2 physical books, and there's also a library service where you can upload the ebook, stuff like that. Just so I imagine that there will be some of the same stuff in Switzerland for local purposes. So so look into that, and look into if there is a new pub kind of network. It's become, I realized that it's become more and more normal to publish yourself. That in Denmark, at least, because there's been a very active association kind of promoting the publishing yourself, it's up on that status of the newspapers will, in a couple of years, 5 years ago, they would only do critics on books that were published from publishing houses. But nowadays they take in the self-publishing books also. We have a big book market here in Denmark, and when you are part of this new pub network, you can be part of the organization going to the book market. So I could imagine that will also be happening in other countries. I don't know exactly what's going on, but I you know, in case you cannot find anything, come back to me and I will ask, because the guy who's in front of it in Denmark is a good friend of mine, so I can ask him if he knows about associations anywhere else.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah.
Goodbye. Thanks so much.
Look into that. Bye-bye. Any other
Bye.
questions of the few left here? Thank you for staying behind. Corinne or Peter or Anne-Sophie?
Yep. Wait.
Just to go on answer. Okay, I just wanted to thank you, Susanne, for the really direct and living sharing. It was really, really beautiful, and I wish you all the best for your book coming out very soon. So I heard now. So
Thank you very much, Peter. That was very nice, and I will tell you what my mother is going to say. I really understand that part of it. It's like I had to really, you know what? I was very careful when I decided, when I wrote, I didn't talk about that when I decided to write the book, I also decided that I was not gonna put anybody in a difficult position by writing the book, because it is a personal book about my life journey. But I wanted to be really nice to people in my life. And you can always find a way of writing that doesn't kind of put people out there. You know, my mother might feel that there's a few things in there that she can get hurt by, but it's only her who knows it. At least I'm not, you know, exposing her for the world. And I have no names in my book. That's the other things. I don't mention any names. So of course I have a very particular last name so people can find who is my mother if they want to. But I have taken a little bit of precautions here and there to make sure that nobody gets offended by the book. It's also a lot about my old lovers, and I'm not mentioning any of those. That would have been a little bit, they might recognize themselves when they read the text, but it's I'm trying to be kind. You know, why not be kind in this world that we're living in? So
Well,
You can still
sometimes
say,
if you are not so kind, sometimes it could give some trigger to the person who receives it, and it can work, but it's maybe not the good option. It's maybe too provocating. Then I don't know.
yeah, you know, sometimes you need to write that provocating book. You know, sometimes you need to write the book that really rebels everything and rips up everything, and that's okay. People have done that in the future. I just felt my book was about love, so I didn't want to cause hurt.
That's very nice.
So I turned it around instead to see what is it that fuels the love. And by telling the story about what fuels the love, of course, there's also a story about what's lacking there. But it's not saying, oh, you were a bad mother, not loving me all my life. But it's saying there was a lack in my life of love, and now I have found it. You know, there's a difference on how you can turn it around.
Yes. That's very nice. Very beautiful. What's the title of your book, Susanne?
It's called A Book on Love.
A Book on Love.
Yeah. So that's what it is. It is a book on love. So I hope you will join in, and now you're not getting it for free. You have to buy it for $2 or something like that. That's a new thing.
$2, that's almost free, Susanne.
Yeah, that is almost free. So, but it will only be for a couple of periods, 2 or 3 days or something like that. You can get it almost free.
Okay.
So I hope you will go in and join, and join me next Friday when we launch it, make this pre-launch.
Next Friday.
I will talk a little bit more about the content of the book. This was more about the process.
Next Friday, it's not tomorrow. It's Friday.
Well, next Friday.
Friday next week.
Yeah, but you are on the newsletter from Alexander, right? So he will probably share with you there.
I'm on the Creative Love Business site, yes, from Peter Koenig.
Yeah, and if any one of you, well, which is not the case, because if you want to be on my newsletter, you go into this website. If you go into that website, you can sign up for my newsletter.
Oh, okay. And I will see the date.
Make sure you sign up for the English version of the newsletter.
I see.
On the English site. Corina, you're getting my newsletter.
I'm getting it.
Yeah. And you had a question too?
It was more a comment connecting back to your network that you said. I don't know the editing business in Denmark, but I would be very interested to connect to the group you mentioned before, and to this platform of editing, because in Switzerland, I guess it's such a small market. We're not yet developed in those forms. And so if you could now or later give me the contact yeah.
New public hub network. I'll just see if I can find. I can give you the website for it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's called New Pub, but I don't. But I think it's only in Danish.
I can read it.
Yeah. But you can maybe you can see if there's any. I'll put the link in here. Maybe you can see if there's any.
New Pub.
Yeah. You can see maybe there's some links to associate, or you can write the director of it and ask him yourself. Actually.
Okay. Referring to
but
you
know, Denmark is just it's just a small country like Switzerland, so it's just about the same.
And I love it because people say, oh yeah, just go straight to the people. And I love to do that too. So, and so thank you so much for offering this. This was so a synchronicity. The questions I had been asking myself the same question that you had. So,
oh, that was nice, Corinne, that we could actually connect like this. So are you working with performing arts?
No, but my daughter has just applied with her portfolio to enter a Viborg animation workshop. Okay. So I've always been, for me, agriculture, it's agri and culture, and it's with the earth and all this. I love architecture, I love design. So I really also connect with what you said about the design of the book, the aesthetics. And I'm always interested to build bridges, because we all creating, so looking forward to meet you once.
Yeah, but I'm so curious when I meet somebody who's actually getting my newsletter that I don't really have such a deep connection with.
Yes, and it's not. I connected to your newsletter maybe a few months ago because I was looking for other residents, and I love Bornholm. I've never been to, but I've been introduced to the the glass fabrics,
Yeah.
And I love the light. The light of Scandinavia, and want to explore this also. And
yeah, that's nice. So yeah, so come visit on Bornholm. We'll make a book. Maybe we'll write a book. No, we can't. Yeah, we can. Maybe we could do a book writing retreat, 2 weeks intensive.
But then you have to introduce me. I'm also very interested to know how you coach people, and so because I had seen something, I said, that looks really interesting, but it's not for a writer. But well, that's why I connected anyway.
Yeah, but I do coach other people than performing artists also. I take people. So let's talk about that at another time.
We do.
See you then. So that's great. And then Sophie, you're still here. It's so beautiful to see you, and you came along.
Yeah,
so,
I just want to thank you for this. It was amazing, and the synchronicity is just magic. So
yeah. That
is perfect.
Yeah, it's calling for the right people at the right time. So so that's great. And do follow Alexander also. It's been amazing for me to follow him. So, but I'll be happy to coach any one of you in this process. And maybe that was a new idea to do a writing retreat on Bornholm. Yeah, in the winter months. I have a lot of performing artists in the summer months, but in the winter it's more solitude. We can't use the big spaces, so we have 3 rooms, so I could have 3 or 4 people in a writing residency.
Wow.
Yeah, that'll be the next. Of course I should do a writing residency.
It's not too cold. It's not too cold up there, Susanne.
Oh, it's dark and cold, but that's actually good when you're writing indoor. So it's in the countryside, but the house is heated. The main house is heated. The big performing space, the rehearsing spaces is not heated, so it's not possible to use those in the winter time. But the house, I was sitting over there all this winter, so and in fact, in some way, I'm thankful for the corona, because the corona made me have to shut down enough to actually write my book. I didn't mention that, but that's of course a part of it. I realized I'm not missing out on anything. I can actually close myself down and write a book. This is the time, if ever there was a time, this was it.
Yes, I've heard a lot of stories of that kind. For many people who are already enough aligned, they lived the corona crisis a little bit that way.
Yeah.
Not always with a book, but with something else. And it was a good time, in fact. It's a little bit strange to say that, but it's like that.
Yeah, and we're not wishing it to continue. Now we've been lifted, but still, just have to take the best of it.
Yeah.
So, and I'm looking forward to seeing your book projects also.
Well, who knows?
Yeah, I think if you have a book there, you need to write. No, nobody needs to do anything, but there's a book calling for you.
I will see.
Yeah.
Thank you anyway.
For all of you. So
thank
take care.
You.
It was beautiful to be with you, and let's stay in contact.
Bye
bye.
Thanks.